over and over again, I hear people say, it's lonely, or it's not much fun doing the work by myself. And so what seems to want to happen is a group where we do stuff together. And so all I am is the pointer, I think, to point out a direction from my experience that we can take this year. And the whole idea of awakening to love is the idea. And I see there's a lot of what we'll call personal growth out there. I've done a ton of it, like I've read, I would say several hundred personal growth books. And I've listened to, several hundred or thousand podcasts, and I've been to, with lots of teachers and all in an effort to somehow. Do we need a few more chairs? Maybe. All in an effort, to somehow make myself better. Did anybody relate to that? And if I, kind of do enough work or read enough books or hang out with enough teachers, some of it is I'm going to change. And because the concept of myself was that I needed to change. That was my thing, and somehow I needed to be different, or be better, or be more, or more effective, or more likable, or more loving, or more, but just I needed to be more. And so I really, since the late 70s, my life has been more or less committed to figuring out in some way what was wrong with me. Probably nobody can relate to that, but and so this is not that kind of group. What I don't know if I learned this or I just finally the door finally opened, but what I realized is that I'm, number one, not who I thought I was. And who I thought I was, all the labels that I had and all the stories that I had about myself. And the very early stories were, of course, that I wasn't enough. And that's why I spent most of my life trying to be more. And so my conditioned beliefs were my stories. And so I'm not that. Which leaves me in a bit of a position of not knowing then, if I'm not that, who am I? And which is kind of, we could stop right there. That's the big question. But so, and if I'm myself in this moment. I'm in I think it was, a bit of Eckhart Tolle and a bit of David Hawkins and a bit of Paul Lowe, who always said, "Be here now." And many of those things combined, that one day I realized that I couldn't rewrite the script enough for me to be content, or for me to buy the story. And the story was the story of who I thought I was. And if you asked me, it was also the Enlightenment Intensive, like the Satori experience that I just hated and decided I would never do, and finally did, and it was like, oh my God, I'm none of those things, do you remember? Yes, and it was like, because that was just 3 days of tell me who you are, and all of the story fell away, and so who are we? And that's what I want to point towards for this year, and for all of us, and because I think that we're all looking for something, and we've been looking for it outside of us. Many of us have been looking outside of us, and spent a lot of my life looking for a concept of God outside of me, you know, in a variety of religions and in a variety of belief systems. And, you know, I spent, you know, 2 years religiously in sweats. You know, I would go to the reserve and I would be there. Great belief system, you know, and as I talk about these beliefs, I'm not in any way disparaging any of them. I just recognize that I didn't find, you know, what I was looking for there. And you know, and I went to India and spent time with the Dalai Lama, and even if he was saying what we're going to talk about tonight, I didn't hear it, because it was kind of masked in a lot of story, and there was a lot to filter through to find it. And I've been to Peru and been with the elders there and went through their ceremonies, and all of those things helped to find a glimpse. But so anyway, what I think is possible is that we can awaken to this one thing that we all really want, that we can't really get because we already have, and that's love. And that's the name of our, you know, one day that's coming up in March. You know, we're calling it Awakening. The context is Awaken to Love, so what I haven't developed this. I can't even, you know, but I'll just say that what we've developed, or what we're going to do, is practice bringing love, or the moment, or universal intelligence, or God, or, you know, it, into the moment. And we're going to use things like fear and complaint, and to be the touchstones. Anger. Does anybody, probably nobody in here got angry today even once, but maybe, and you know how irritation comes up. It's kind of there's, all of these things have like a low grade form. Many of us have spent most of our life living in what I call a low grade fear. They call it anxiety, right? And God bless them, and they can give you pills for it. But it doesn't really deal with it. It numbs it, but it doesn't really deal with it. And some of us live in a low-grade anger. If anybody know anybody that, you know, when you're around them, you kind of tiptoe because you know they're just about ready to explode. And I mean, they're fucking angry, you know. And I've been that way myself. And so that's the possibility, is that we'll look at this year our belief systems, you know. We'll look at our conditioned beliefs about ourselves, about life, about relationship, about money. What about anything else? That covers a lot of it, doesn't it? Time. We have belief systems, huge belief systems around time. I mean, we really believe that yesterday happened. And we're quite attached to it. Or we think we know what happened in yesterday. Did you know? And it's really, it took me a long time to realize that my story of yesterday isn't what happened. You know, my story of yesterday was just my perception of what happened. And it was filtered through my mind, which has a lot of stories about everything. You know, about me, about you, and automatic stories about, you know, people because of the way they sit on the chair, or the, you know, I mean, we make up shit about, you know, the kind of glasses they wear, or we're instantly judging, and so then we take all that judgment into the story of our life, so we're going to look at judgments, and so the possibility is to be free, but we can't think our way to freedom. We can only, through awareness and bringing ourselves constantly back to the moment with love, and we can use our breath to bring us into the moment, we can eventually, you know, get here. And it's kind of Paul used to say, my teacher used to say, you cannot find it by looking for it, and you won't find it if you don't look for it. And I was like, fuck. What is it? You know, and the koan, you know, what is it? And it was, well, it isn't even really love, although awakening to love is the conversation. It's just now. And if we can be here now, and so that's what we're going to practice. Like a whole year of just practicing being here now, and helping each other to bust our stories. You know, we have stories around business. We have stories around, well, I've been over quite a big list. So does that sound like fun? Yeah. Well, it's not. It is. It's a bit hard because we're attached, right? We're attached. I'm attached to my story. You know, I had lots of them about me that I was very attached to and tried to live into. And we're also attached to this idea of creating a certain future. And I was listening to Joe Dispenza on the way over, and I love Joe, you know, but Joe is talking about his mind movies. So basically, we decide and create this movie so that we can live into it. And I don't know, my experience is that I can't, it's almost impossible for me. It's impossible for me to decide big enough. You know, if I can live in the moment and be as much as possible in connection with spirit, the moment, love, God, then I don't have to create a magnificent future. It's already happening because I will be in acceptance in each moment. I will be in love in each moment. And then it doesn't really matter what's happening. Does that make sense? You know, because I spent almost all of my life trying to get stuff to make me happy, to get stuff to make me feel filled up, make me feel a certain way. So living in the moment is, I think, is not for the faint of heart. So I commend you, you know, and I'm going to keep repeating this, and you know, some of you may not like it in a way, because it's like, oh my gosh, we might actually wake up and say, I'm not doing this is not the life I want. You know, I'm not, it doesn't feel right anymore for one reason or another. We've been ignoring the fact that it doesn't feel right. And we haven't been trusting our intuition and living into some idea of what our life should be. And it might be an idea that our mom or dad gave us, or that a spouse gave us, or that, you know, so we have been doing something. And I think as we get closer to this connection with spirit, the moment, love, we find freedom to let go of all of the things that we believed we should be. You know, we don't even use the word should anymore. We're out of the shoulds. I'm excited because I feel honored actually to be part of it, and that there's this possibility that we can drop into this space that's outside of our idea of what's happening here, and so we don't get better. We just become who we really are. That's pretty cool, isn't it? We just become who we really are, and I believe we are spirit. We're God in incarnate. That we're here. We have access to. In my 12-step world, it says, God either is or He isn't, and it was written 80 years ago, so it's a bit patriarchal. And so God either is or she isn't. And either she's everything or she's nothing. And I had this idea that God was, or the moment, or love, was something outside of me. that it was over there, and then I was separate from. And that conditioned belief came from some of my teachings in religion. It came from this idea that I was in some way very much less than, and that if I was a really good boy, that God would shine his love light on me in some way, and so I think that as we realize that we are really living in, with all the possibilities in each moment, that we are God's incarnated. Is that the word? Yeah. And gosh, I feel like I'm blasphemous in the United Church saying this shit, but still, here we are. And it's a bit of a big package, but that's the package. And so hang on, and there's lots of, if I can suggest, there's some great authors that have really been telling us this, and I'm only going to talk about some of the more modern ones, but there are, we've been told forever. The Bhagavad Gita is an amazing book where we can, by Stephen Mitchell. His rendition, his translation is amazing. Everything that Hawkins wrote is really helps us to see who we are and or who we have thought we were as well, who we've been pretending we are, and it's so dense that it's almost impossible to see, because we really think that this is it. I mean, that we're this thing that we think we are, which is generally not enough, and we can drop past it anyway. Eckhart Tolle, of course, has really talks about living in the moment and how everything that ever is, was, or ever will be is now. And I mean, that's a Christian that came. Christ supposedly said that and he's basically saying it, and he said, "I and my Father are one," and everything I can do, you guys can do, and he was telling us in his teachings, and it kind of got convoluted a bit, I think, and so. Although I'm not prescribing any particular religion, I just believe that most of the religions at their core had this idea that we were amazing beings and we could wake up to this and live in love. So we're going to play with love and use love as the idea of what we're going to bring into each moment. So all our relationships, and I often say, what would love do? When in my thoughts of asking, and what would love do? And anyway, and I have to trust, because my ego often says something different. Meditation is a tool for us to drop into the space beyond the consciousness that we're in now, and as we drop into that consciousness, we can actually see old consciousness, talking, and because it talks a lot, and we call it thinking, and so we see the thinking going, and recognize that often that, well, there's hardly anything very important that it thinks. Especially if we're sitting here meditating, but you can tell it that we're here meditating for 10 minutes and that it's safe and that it's okay and it can relax, and we'll practice using the breath to be here in our meditation. But yeah, 10 minutes? No way. Okay, James is going to take us on a 15-minute ride, but meditation really helps us to see that we are not our thoughts, and which is just a kind of a tip that if we're not our thoughts, then we're not, who we think we are. Who created that image of us, our thinking. We made decisions at 3 years old about ourselves and 4 years old about ourselves because of something that happened or something that somebody said, and so it wasn't true.